Peace, peace, peace. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. For those of you who don't know, it's your boy Vic Slain Hope. I got another video for y'all. We doing another law of the 48 laws of power. This one is law number 41, and is avoid stepping into a great man's shoes. The judgment states, what happens first always appears better and more original than what comes after. If you succeed a great man or have a famous parent, you will have to accomplish double their achievements to outshine them. Do not get lost in their shadow or stuck in a past not of your own making. Establish your own name and identity by changing course. Slay the overbearing father, disparage his legacy, and gain power by shining in your own way. Now, before I even get into my commentary or my explanations, right, or my examples, make sure you hit the like button and make sure you share it with somebody. I'm out to share a little something with y'all. So if y'all messing with the content, make sure you like, you share it, and you subscribe to the channel so you can stay afloat of my content, right? And I'm gonna give y'all two examples from the book, and I'm gonna give y'all my own personal example, and then we're gonna get up out of here. Right now, the example that they give in the book is about Louis the 14th, right? And Louis the 14th, he was a king in France. And when he came at a time when France was going through turmoil and on the verge of a civil war, right? And he reigned for 55 years. And during his reign, he kind of like brought the country together. He made them into a preeminent power throughout all of Europe. So he kind of like solidified their power as a country, as a nation. And also the way that he ruled in a way that he didn't want to like attach himself to like the previous king. So he kind of like, set up his own palace. He did his own things, right, to kind of like stand out. And so when you rule for that long and the way that he ruled, and he's gonna be remembered for some of the great things that he did, right? Because the people remember and what state they were in when a great leader comes about. So now when you are a great person, people tend to be looking at your descendants, because you know how monarchies work. They get passed down, right? So now we have this great man that did these great things. Now people are looking towards your descendants like, what are you gonna do, right? And most of the time, people are not. They want more. They don't want less. They don't want about. They'll settle for about the same. But most of the time, they want more, right? Even when we kind of like elect the president, we don't be looking for the new president to kind of like do the same thing the last president do, right? We did. We look for the president to give us more, to take us to the next level, give us more rights, more benefits, make us better. So we never want him to be less better than the last, so that's just how it works. So people started looking at putting the pressure and putting the odds on his descendant. Now, his descendant didn't really want to fit the shoes. Like, he wanted to do whatever he wanted to do. And sometimes this happens in monarchies, right? Sometimes the man, some of these guys, especially if they only got one son or whatever, they're kind of like forced into the position. And sometimes these children don't want it. And so when his descendant got involved, he just was doing whatever he wanted. He wasn't really concerned with the affairs of the country. He hired a minister to take care of it, and he just wanted to indulge in pleasures and sleep around and music and a whole bunch of other distractions, right? He really didn't care for like the power. So he couldn't walk in his father's shoes, or his grandfather's shoes, and it kind of like showed. And then by the time the next king after this king came, the people was already fed up with him, and so he let the country fall down, right? Like go to turmoil. And then by the time like the next king sat down, he had so much to fix that a civil war broke out. The people got fed up, and then they just ended up killing him. Right, and they called him Louis the Last. By the time Louis the 16th came, they called him Louis the Last. Right, so the point in this story was that people are always going to be watching your descendants, and there's going to be a lot of pressure on them. And a lot of times when there's pressure on them, they can't really function, and they'll rather just abandon ship. He didn't want the ship to begin with. And I want to read this real quick. It says, the pamper indulged son always squanders the inheritance, for he does not start with the father's need to fill a void. And a lot of times that happens. We see a lot of people who gain an inheritance or richness or money. They don't really have to do a lot of work because their parents already did the work, and they just really inheriting the money. And they don't come from a place where they gotta get it. They don't come from a place of where they need to grind and hustle and get it. Like, I know people like that themselves, right? Like, if they have shit handed to them, they don't have the same mindset than the people who had to really get it, who had to really grind, who really had to work, you know. And a lot of times people who, again, like, they squander these inheritance. That's kind of like what happened with the king that came after Louis the 14th, on Louis the 15th. He kind of like didn't really need to do much because it was already set out for him, right? All he had to do was continue the work of his ancestor. The other example that they give is of Alexander the Great. Alexander the Great, he kind of like didn't like the way his father ruled. His father, you know, he had a good name for himself. He kind of like ruled most of Greece. But Alexander didn't really like the way that he ruled. He ruled in like a slick, cunning way, like, you know, kind of like try to avoid certain things here and there, or move whenever he felt like he needed to move. He moved in a certain way. Alexander wanted more so to be more brute, like use more force. He wanted his father to lead in a certain way. So he kind of like disparaged his father, right? And also his father wanted to conquer the Persian Empire and Asia, right? But that was like his father's dream. So when his father passed away, what he did was he became bigger than his father by conquering the Persian army, right? And you know, his empire, Alexander the Great's empire, actually became bigger than his father. So he kind of like basically obliterated his legacy, because now we're gonna remember you, right? We're not talking about Alexander the Great. I mean, father. We're not talking about his father. We're talking about Alexander the Great today, right? Everybody talks about him, because again, he surpassed his father's legacy. So that's an exception in a way, right? Because a lot of people don't necessarily do that, right? That's why we still remember Alexander the Great as, you know, one of like the greatest military generals that ever lived, right? Because he did twice the work or more of his father. And it's rare when you see like a child that is coming under his father's greatness actually overstep their greatness, right, in history. Now, the example that I'm gonna give y'all of this is like kind of like LeBron James, right? LeBron James, for example, he has two sons, right? And his sons are following in his footsteps. They are playing basketball just like him. But LeBron is probably gonna go out like one of the greatest, right? Or he might go down like as the greatest. We don't know, right? So, but the point is, because he is so much up there in his accomplishments as a basketball player, people are already looking at his sons, right? His sons didn't even make it. They probably like, what, are they in high school or like about to come out of high school? Yeah, like they haven't even made it to like a certain height. They're not even in college yet. They're not even, you know, they're not even in the NBA. And people are already looking at them like they're already like the center of attention because who their father is, right? And they're following in the same exact footsteps. And this is why the law says, do not try to follow in a great man's shoes, because you're always going to be stressed. You're always going to be thinking about, damn, it's gonna be, I have to be twice as better than this person. And LeBron, after this season, he might lead in the scoring title, right? Somebody else probably not even gonna be able to do that, right? He came in at 18 years old. You know, he been playing for 20 seasons. He probably gonna play for 21, 22. Who knows, right? But the point of the matter is this: his children are already being looked at, so there's a lot of pressures on them. So when they saying make your own way, now if Bronny and his other son Bryce decided to play another sport, you know, let's go play tennis or something, you don't have that same pressure, right? But because you're following in your father's footsteps, or in the footsteps of a great leader, it's gonna be hard. And this is kind of like why the judgment says establish your own name and identity by changing course. Right now, Alexander the Great established his own name and identity. He didn't necessarily change course because he kind of like followed what his father wanted to do to a certain extent. But he did change course in the way that he ruled. He ruled a little bit with a little more force. You know, he was a little more relentless in his attacks and in how he did things, right? So he did change course in a certain extent, right? But he still kind of like accomplished the dream that his father had. Now, yeah, like I was saying, like LeBron's sons, even Dwayne Wade's son, right? He's playing basketball too, but his father was a great player. And you're always going to be living in the shadow of your father if you follow in the same exact footsteps and trying to like accomplish in the same profession. So that's kind of like it. The reversal is basically that, you know, the shadow of a great predecessor could be used as an advantage, as a chosen trick and a tactic that can be discarded once it's brought to power. For example, they said Napoleon III, he kind of like used the shadow of Napoleon the first, Bonaparte. I mean Bonaparte. Bonaparte. You know, Napoleon III, he used like, you know, his ancestor Napoleon Bonaparte, which was also a great military, a great military general, and he also became the Emperor of France. So he used his name for a little bit while he was trying to get into a position of power, and then once he got there, he kind of like discarded the shadow, and he let the people know that he was gonna rule in his own way. Again, he's not holding on to like the histories of the past and the way that his ancestor ruled, right? Kind of like try to distinguish himself. But the reversal is that you can use the shadow of a great predecessor just to kind of like, so almost like using the name of somebody, like, oh, I'm related to such and such, you know, that's my uncle, boom boom. And then once you get in the door, you kind of like let people know, like, but I ain't nothing like my uncle. You feel me? So that's, hopefully, you know, that's the law. You know, try to avoid a great man's shoes. But you can also use the name if it's beneficial. But it's all about making your own identity and creating your own way. Let me know y'all thoughts in the comment section. Y'all stay blessed. Peace.